Hello and welcome to MLive Citizen Roundtable. This year, leading up to the election, MLive has reported a series of stories focused on Michigan's economy, our education system, and our infrastructure. We're using these stories to frame the election and talk to our candidates. These are some Michigan citizens who have been instrumental to us in forming these stories, and we're excited to have Michigan Attorney General Bill Schuette with us today. Bill, would you like a minute to talk about yourself and why you're running?
Well, you bet. And listen, thank you, Emily, for this opportunity to be together. And I'm grateful to have Amber and John and Susan and Ken and Nicole here and this discussion and conversation. I'm running for governor because I want Michigan to grow. And I want our state to be a growth state, a paycheck state, and a job state. Because other states are growing faster than we. And I don't want us to be a shrinking state. I want us to have a paycheck agenda of more jobs and bigger paychecks, and so that Michigan is a place where people plant their flag and raise their families and build their futures, because there's no finer place than Michigan. And that's the Michigan that I grew up at. My hometown is Midland. My dad died when I was but a boy, just 6 years of age, and my mom raised my two older sisters and me as a single mom. And she was tough and resilient and spirited and kept our family intact. And here I am in a career in public service, and with just about a month to go, working hard to earn people's trust and support to be their next governor.
Thanks for being with us tonight, Bill. And
you're welcome. You're welcome.
The question I have is, public education's not working. We've continued to pour money into the school system without seeing major improvements. What would you do to reinvent the way public education is conducted to address our failing system?
Well, Ken, thank you for your question. Education is a key element for me in terms of how we drive our state forward. Now, my wife and I went to public schools in Midland, Michigan, Carpenter Street Elementary, Jefferson Middle School, and Midland Dow, and our children went to the very same public schools as well. And they got a great education. But today, unfortunately, for too many kids, they are not getting the education that they deserve. And it's not teachers' fault. It's about, and the war on teachers has to end. But the fact is, we need to make sure that we have a plan and approach that helps children succeed. Our third grade reading scores, Ken, are among the lowest in America. Only 35% of our third graders are proficient in reading when they complete the third grade. And that means that the approach we're taking now, it gets an F. What I want to do is have a literacy director as governor, smack dab in my cabinet because of the significance of reading. I want to grade our schools A through F, a report card for families and parents so they can determine how their school matches up against others. I believe in incentives, and for those schools that are showing improvement, then I would reward that with financial grants to encourage that and others to compete as well. And we need to have greater emphasis on skilled trades and apprenticeships. So education is part of the driving force, and when I'm governor, Michigan's children will read.
Hearing that our schools are failing is tough for a teacher to take in, especially when every day with second grade I see growth, and that's the reason why I do what I do, and that's the reason why most teachers do what they do. So
I agree with you, by the way. I mean, that it is a hard question, it's a hard answer to digest, and the fact that these third grade reading scores, it's not just one area in Michigan, it's across the state, and we can't afford, that's just wrong. I mean, we ought to be up in arms about that.
So third grade reading law is enacted, but it was passed without a lot of backing to pay for it. How would you combat that?
Number one, we need to stick to one test, one plan, keep the goalposts in place, so to speak, and use that as a judgment. And we need to focus on outcomes, in my opinion. And we need to try different things. You know, for example, I want to have a Michigan Reading Foundation, Amber, where you'd have the business community and the philanthropic community contribute to this foundation, where we could hire summer reading coaches, and we could have summer reading camps and work on pre-K efforts to help children read.
Education policy, both on a state and federal level in recent years, has left many teachers feeling demoralized. Some have left education and others have chosen different career paths. This has led to a teacher shortage. How do you plan to attract and retain teachers?
This question about teacher shortage and how you retain leaders in education is very similar to how do you get more workers in a lot of different professions here in the state of Michigan. And I think it's about how you have our economic climate, in my opinion. And we need to broaden and deepen the pool of talent, which really means people. And I'm running for governor to build our population, because other states are growing faster than we are. Here's an example. I was in the Thumb not long ago meeting with the school superintendent, and right now there are 8,000 children in the Sanilac school system. Years ago there were 16,000. So we've seen the number of kids in schools shrink. In Michigan, we once had 19 members of Congress. After the next census, we're going to have 13. So what does that tell you? It means that we don't have enough people in Michigan, which means a teacher shortage, or it might be folks working in a shop, or it might be for any other type of profession. If we don't add to our population, Michigan will be a shrinking state. I am not going to manage Michigan's decline.
I appreciate the answer you gave about wanting Michigan to grow, but speaking to Amber's question specifically, like, I think that we have plenty of teachers. What she's saying is that we have teachers leaving the profession because we can't retain them because of how they're treated. How would you attract and retain teachers specifically?
So I think it's number one, it's about respect, and this war on teachers has to end. And I'm a guy who went to public schools. I believe in public education. I also believe that parents are in charge, and they need to make sure that they've got to be deeply involved in this process. And I think in today's teachers need to have more dollars and cents for training. This is the 21st century. This is not the one-room schoolhouse. It's not Little House on the Prairie. Rather, it is Michigan, 21st century. We need to compete against states all across the country.
So, you know, the average tuition today is about $28,000 a year, right?
For higher education.
Higher education. Yeah. And that's a sizable cost for, you know, a four-year degree or universities, right? But the people that are graduating from those degrees may not see opportunity in Michigan. One is, how are you going to promote additional opportunities for the state for these type of students? And the other one is, how would you promote skilled labor careers and kind of integrate them into the workforce?
K through 12 education, it has to be the center point for education progress. We also need to make sure that when children graduate, they're ready, and that some children have to have remediation before they can achieve in college. That's wrong, and so that goes right back to this reading issue. And you know, not everybody needs to be, John, a software engineer living in California and working for Google. There are a lot of great jobs in the skilled trades and apprenticeships. I was in Madison Heights, a suburb of Detroit, not long ago, and the superintendent there took me through this lab, this class, this course, where they're training people for jobs of the future the moment they get out of high school. And DTE has a great approach with a community college, Henry Ford College, and Randolph High School, where they have a continuum of mentoring, partnership, and a job availability. And I think that's an example of this marriage or a joint partnership in terms of working with children to young kids will end up going to the workforce. And I think that the cost of higher education is such that not everyone needs to go to college.
So some states have enacted free community college, and the governor's 21st Century Education Commission has proposed it. Do you think such a plan is feasible in Michigan? And if so, how would you propose it to be funded and operated?
I'm a big community college supporter. My sister, I have three children in our family, and one of my sisters, Gretchen, who's the real Gretchen in my life, I just want you to know that. My sister, Gretchen Schuette, used to be a president of a community college in Oregon, and so I get the significance of community colleges and how important they are. You know, as to whether or not they could be free or not, you know, I think we have to be careful. Very few things in life are free. And something always costs. I think the investment that we make, I believe, in our K through 12 system is really the most vital concern for me, because it goes back to this issue of reading.
So the third grade reading law, you're familiar?
Yes.
I believe it's this year's third graders that will be affected. So if we have a third grader who is not reading at grade level, they're retained. what happens when they don't read at grade level that year?
Well, I'm of the attitude, I'm a can-do kind of guy. We need to make sure that we do everything possible to have that person, that young child, read. And whether that's summer reading camps, whether that's reading coaches, we just have to get it done. That has to be the attitude. We have to have a can-do approach because if we don't teach that person the ability to read, it's a dead-end street. And then where does that person go? What's the future? It's probably a life of crime. Maybe it's selling drugs. Maybe it's in the prison system. We've lost a life then. My attitude is, I'm not going to, Amber, I'm not going to give up on that person. You see, that is not how I. Yeah, that's not how I operate. That's not how I operate.
Do you believe, for instance, whether it's your initiatives in English, is that a school's job, or the combination actually is also the parents? You know, it's just like, you know, personally, I believe it's like it shouldn't be just all the school. You know, but you know, what kind of message would you drive so you have a collaborative environment? Now, when our kids went home, my wife or I were there, and we read every day and made sure that before our children went to bed, they read. And that was the kind of nurturing home that we had, and what I grew up in. But not everybody has that same experience. Not everybody reads before they go to bed tonight. And that's why these other programs, reading coaches and summer reading camps and pre-K programs with an emphasis on reading, we're going to have to explore, because otherwise some family structures that are strained or broken or fractured or not perfect will need additional help so that child learns to read.
Michigan's middle class is disappearing as students leave school with excess debt and wages have stagnated. What is your plan to raise wages in Michigan?
8 years ago, we were on the mat. We had 15% unemployment. 500,000 jobs had been lost, and there was a mass exodus from Michigan. And worse yet, our children, many children left and haven't come back. I was at a company last week, and a woman came up to me and talked about the lost decade when people vanished from Michigan. And she told me about the fact that her family members went to Georgia. So now, when she has her vacation time to see her family, she has to go out of state to see her family. That has to end. What I want our state to do, I want to have maximized wages. I'm not for government mandates. My opponent wants to have government mandates. I think that would crush economic development in the state. I don't want to have limitations on how much people make or earn. I think the market is better instead of the heaviness of government. My opponent and I have different viewpoints. She has an extreme agenda with more taxes, mandates on hours and wages in terms of employment, and that would crush job creation and send our state backwards. I, on the other hand, want to lower auto insurance rates so people have, more check during the month. I mean, when you pay $1,000 more in our auto insurance rates than any other state in America, something's wrong, and that has to end. That will lift your income. Also, I want us to sharpen every tool in our economic toolbox by cutting taxes and further cutting the personal property tax so that job providers are encouraged to grow.
As a business owner, actually, it's refreshing to hear that, right? Because part of it I look at is the economy will justify, for a particular job position role, what it will dictate from a payroll or salary perspective, right? Because great talent's going to cost you something. But as a business owner, though, we also seek, eco-business friendly environment. From your perspective, how would you make Michigan more eco-friendly business-wise so that you attract not just existing businesses, but new businesses to come into the state?
It's the 21st century. We ought to be able to have economic growth and drive job creation and have respect and stewardship for our environment. I mean, and we live in Michigan, where we have kind of etched in our DNA is this responsibility of stewardship, respect to the Great Lakes. Our rivers, lakes, and streams make Michigan a very, very special place. So I think we need to have a Department of Environmental Quality that makes decisions on permits and regulation based on solid science, John. That's what I need to do. And to have a state economic development plan where we provide incentives for people in Michigan, companies and businesses to grow, and also we try to attract other businesses from out of state to come to Michigan.
So as an accountant, I'm very happy to hear we will pay less tax. So here's my question. Michigan is a state with many resources and a long manufacturing history. Past governors have tried to diversify away from the auto industry by offering incentives. How do you view the relationship between economic development incentive and the current state tax revenue?
From my standpoint, there's an economic civil war going on in America. And it's where the jobs will be built and created. 110 people go to Nashville, Tennessee, every day to work. And a plane load of people, a 747 plane load of people, arrive in the Austin Metroplex every day to work. Now, I think about this, and I say, what gives? Why are they have more cranes in the sky and boots on the ground than we do? And it's not the weather, because it's 110 degrees in Dallas in July. It is their economic climate. So we need to make sure in terms of rules, regulations, and taxation that we drive our costs down, and so that we are competitive with those other states. We need to win this war about mobility. And what I mean by mobility is where the cars of the future will be researched, designed, built, and manufactured. It has to happen in Michigan, and we can't lose that race to mobility. There's a competition between California and Michigan, the tech sector and the transportation sector, and Michigan has to win.
What's your vision to attract a business to Michigan?
This is the best place to plant your flag and raise your family and build your future. My mom and dad grew up in the Great Depression, a time, for every historian here, was a time of economic calamity in America. People were out of work, out of hope, and out of luck. They came to Michigan because it was a time of great growth and potential and opportunity. And there was a spirit in Michigan at that time. And we need to have that same attitude and spirit today. And it means, I'm for right to work. I'm the Right to Work Attorney General, and that'll attract more businesses to come to Michigan. I was meeting with Governor Haslam of Tennessee, and we were talking about foreign direct investment. Whenever he goes to Asia or to Europe, the very first question that is posed to Governor Haslam, the governor of Tennessee, which is a growth state right now, right, is, are you right to work or not? I want to keep right to work. My opponent wants to turn back the clock and go on rewind and prohibit right to work. That's a difference. I think right to work will be an important thing for Michigan to go forward. And I'm for eliminating the prevailing wage statute, which meant that our cost of public construction would go lower because it would be competitively bid, which means a more efficient use of taxpayers' dollars. And my opponent wants to reinstate the prevailing wage statute. So that's how we grow and have competition in our state, and we have to have balanced incentives that we encourage Michigan growth but attract other businesses to come to our state called Michigan.
So do you believe Michigan can fix its road without new revenue? If so, how? If not, how would you raise revenue?
No one travels these roads more than I do in these 83 counties and 2 peninsulas of Michigan. And it's the quality of our roads need to be as highest quality like our cars that are built in Michigan and designed in Michigan and researched and put together in our state of Michigan. And so for roads, number one, we need to have a full and complete review of how our roads are, road dollars are allocated. And it ought to be miles paved per gallon. And so I'm going to have a full audit and review, number one, of how the Michigan Department of Transportation spends money. Secondly, we need to have guarantees. We need to have guarantees for our roads and bridges. Any product you buy today in America, you get a guarantee of some sort, right? Well, you ought to get that for roads and bridges in Michigan and our infrastructure rebuilding. And thirdly, I am going to be an advocate for getting more federal money back to Michigan. Instead of always being a donor state, we need to receive more. And I was a former member of Congress. I have a skill set. I understand how that place works. And with the relationships I have with the administration, the president and vice president, I can walk in the front door or get a phone call returned. And part of the job as governor is to be an advocate for Michigan. I will do that. That's a skill set I have, and to get more federal dollars back. And we have a $58 billion budget. A $58 billion budget here in the state of Michigan. It's gone up in the past 8 years. And it seems to me that we must and will establish roads as a priority. But raising taxes, I think, is the wrong approach. My opponent says she wants to fix the roads. That's code language for, I'm going to raise your darn taxes. And you know what? I don't think we need to raise your darn taxes. Matter of fact, we need to use money and establish that from our budget. And everyone's going to have to pitch in on that to make roads a priorities for Michigan's future.
Bill, the DEQ is responsible for monitoring the development, operation, and expansion of public water and sewer systems. We have witnessed the deterioration of this old infrastructure. What policies would you implement to rehabilitate and maintain the important systems?
Ken, this issue of infrastructure and water is probably never more prevalent than the situation in Flint, as an example. And as Attorney General, I've taken an oath twice. I took an oath in 2011, January 1st of 2011, and January 1st of 2015 to enforce the law. And in Flint, we had a disaster there where 12 people died and kids were poisoned. And I made a decision to do my job and uphold my oath and conduct an investigation to determine what laws, if any, had been violated in this Flint water crisis. Now, I took some heat on it. Some people in my own party said, why did you do this? Well, you know what? Because 12 people died and kids were poisoned. I make no apologies for doing my job. Some would have preferred to sweep it under the rug or ignore it, but that would have been, that would have violated my oath. And that views children and families in Flint as, you know, disposable. Some items on a chessboard or a statistical rounding area in an urban area called Flint. So I make no apologies for my activities and leadership in Flint. And you know what? We need to restore faith and trust and confidence in Flint. And when that's done, and also replace the pipes. So we got to replace the pipes in Flint, and we need to restore faith and confidence in Flint. And that's what I'll do as governor. And now again, Flint was a situation for lack of putting an additive in the water to coat the pipes. We wouldn't have this problem, but it occurred. And I know Flint. I know people in Flint today who only drink water from a plastic bottle, and only wash vegetables, their vegetables with water from a plastic bottle. I think that's wrong, and I think they deserve accountability. And then that's what I've done at Flint to establish that there's one system of justice, and it applies to everybody, no matter who you are, whether you're a big shot or no shot at all.
If recreational marijuana is legalized, what, if any, additional regulations would you put in place?
You know, I think this issue of legalization of marijuana will be decided by citizens of the state of Michigan. You know, whether it passes or not, we'll find that out on November 6th as well. As governor, if it's put into place, then I will implement it fully and completely. And I look at it this way, that this is about citizen democracy. I personally feel that legalization of marijuana is not a good idea. I think about the opioid crisis, where we see today in Michigan more people dying of opioid and heroin overdose than there are car accidents. And more opioid prescriptions were written in Michigan than we have population in 2016. And this crisis is real. I had a friend of mine who we were talking about the opioid crisis, and his son has an addiction. And he said, Bill, you go find out more about this issue, and then we'll have a conversation. So I did. And I went to a recovery center. And when you see those who are caught in the grips of addiction, like this young girl who was an athlete who injured herself and then got hooked on opioids, and then when that runs out, then the cheapness of heroin. It was a harrowing story. This opioid issue is serious. It's an important one, and that deserves our time and attention with treatment, education, and also cracking down on the pill mill docs and the heroin dealers.
So part of the issue within kind of addictions is also the mental health concerns within the state or within our community as a whole. And part of your thoughts and direction of increasing our population size and potentially increasing all these aspects of things. Michigan is not known to be one of the most mental health friendly state. What support are you looking at in that kind of areas, or have you considered?
I have considered that, John, and you see some of the challenges that we have in America today, and there's a mental health crisis, no doubt. We've seen it in some tragic school shootings, for example. The individual in Florida was raising his hand in a figurative sense, but no one helped him with this mental health crisis in the shooting in Parkland. And so we need to make sure we have a fresh look and devote resources for the mental health challenges we have in Michigan today. I want to work with the different viewpoints and perspectives on mental health to try to assist in that respect.
As the CEO of the state of Michigan, you will have the power to reorganize government agencies and the departments. So based on performance of individual departments, how would you organize them to make them most effective?
I'll bring together a strong group of people, Nicole, that I know to help me put into place the Bill Schuette approach to how we run government in the future. And I have a skill set as a former judge, congressman, state senator, ag director, and as attorney general, seeing government. And that is my skill set. And I'll make sure that we put into place the right policies. I'll put into place the right team of people, experienced women and men who want to drive this state forward, have the same attitude I do about making sure that we win. And I'm going to provide the leadership. We're going to make big decisions quick on both people and also cutting auto insurance rates and eliminating the Granholm-Whitmer income tax increase. Those are the items 1 and 2. Kaboom.
Bill, toxic chemicals called PFAS have been found in drinking water systems across the state and have become a topic of national interest. How do you plan to address PFAS contamination in Michigan?
This will be an issue I know that Governor Snyder and the Department of Environmental Quality they're working on right now. And when I have the privilege to serve as governor, I will work with the findings of the current administration in terms of how we go forward to make sure we have quality and safe drinking water. This issue of drinking water is really important, Ken, because in our Constitution, Article 1, it talks about safety, public safety. And that means safety includes, from my perspective, drinking water that you can get from the tap and you don't have to be worried about it. I told you about the families in Flint that only drink water from a plastic bottle, and 3 generations of Flint families that I've met with and talked with, and they still don't drink the tap water. So with respect to PFAS, we're going to have quality drinking standards, work with the local communities, and also see what federal resources are available, Ken.
The Flint water crisis has been an ongoing issue, right? And through the issue, while the government officials have been saying, yeah, the water is safe to drink, right? Many still don't drink it, as you know.
That's true.
Okay? And the faith in government right now is extremely low, okay? How do you fix that perception and then prevent it from happening in the future as other environmental issues will occur?
I think what I bring, the fact is that I did my job and made sure that we had a full and complete investigation of what happened in Flint. And those laws that were broken, people would be held accountable. What I did by conducting the investigation sent a message that everybody counts and everybody's important. Had I not done this investigation, John, that would have been political. And I think what I will bring as governor is the person who provided accountability and a measure to restore trust. And it's going to take some time. There's no doubt about it. It's going to take some time. But I think because of my independent investigation, it sets a message that I was standing with families in Flint.
All right, well, that concludes our main body of questions here, but we do have a lightning round for you. So
all right.
Our panelists are going to go in order. They each have a yes or no question, but you're a politician, so I'll give you 3 words.
3 words, all right, okay. Except
we're starting with Amber.
Very good. Amber.
Okay. Would you keep the work requirements recently put in place for Healthy Michigan recipients?
Absolutely, yes.
Would you shut down Enbridge's oil pipeline under the Straits of Mackinac?
We should build a tunnel.
Would you
That was
keep
4 words. I'm pretty close.
Would you keep the Healthy Michigan Medicaid expansion?
Yes, it's not going anywhere.
Are you willing to cap medical benefits on auto insurance?
We need to lower auto insurance rates.
Would that include capping the medical?
I'm going to bring everybody together and drive our auto insurance rates down. Everyone's going to have to give a little bit. Everyone's going to have to win a little bit.
Would you expand the FOIA to the governor's office?
Yes. Should Freedom of Information Act be applied to the governor's office? Yes, indeed.
All right, well, that concludes our questions. Thank you so much for spending this evening with us and taking the time to answer our questions tonight. And thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Emily, very much, and Amber and John and Susan and Ken and Nicole. Thank you very much. It was fun.